HAAS Formula One team, or more commonly known as the baby team in Formula One. They've only been around for a few years, and they have really made a really good impact since their arrival in 2016. Now, when HAAS was officially announced that they were going to be entered into Formula One, there was a bit of a slight doubt over how good that this team was going to be, because quite recently, as you would have seen if you were around Formula One, about 10 years ago, you would have seen the likes of Virgin, now former Marussian, then Manor, Caterham, Lotus, and HRT. They all came into Formula One, 3 brand new teams at the start of 2010. Very, very exciting times. 24 drivers on the grid, 12 teams overall. It was incredible, absolutely incredible time. But as time went on, financial difficulty got the better of the teams. All right, maybe the teams were a bit kind of cheated into getting into the sport, but nevertheless, they all demised, and then we were just back left to bog standard 9 teams. But come along HAAS for 2016, and they saved everything, more or less. Came into the sport as their own team, which was absolutely incredible. From of course, the USA, a place where you wouldn't necessarily relate to Formula One, let's say. And 2016 had a really, really solid year, of course, having that amazing result in Australia and Bahrain to kick off the season, and of course their Formula One careers. This is like a win for us. It's a win. I love that team radio message from Romain Grosjean in Australia. And as time went on, like I said, it just got better and better for the team. But 2019 was a very difficult year. The Rich Energy partnership, that was a bit weird, then that broke down. The team's performance was just all over the place. Australia and Bahrain was pretty solid, let's be fair, but then as it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point of where Williams in 2019 were almost, if not a bit faster than that HAAS car. It was absolutely atrocious. And quite recently we would have seen Drive to Survive how bad it actually got behind the scenes at HAAS, and of course K-Mag, I'm pretty sure, would have paid Gunter Steiner and the HAAS team to replace that door that he did break at Silverstone. So Gene Haas this week has came out and said that the threat of them leaving, or the potential of them leaving Formula One, is quite high, let's say. From what he's saying, that he's going to be assessing, like he said this in I think he was speaking to Motorsport, saying that he's going to be assessing the start of the 2020 season to see whether that they stay in F1 or not. Some quotes saying that it's quite expensive. Of course, the rule change in 2021 for teams like Haas and Williams and teams like that. It's quite financially demanding, and of course Haas aren't short of a few bob or two, but Gene Haas wouldn't want to be spending over the odds on the Formula One team if it's not going to generate him money. So Haas is pretty much like the next team kind of saying that they could potentially leave, but we're all believing it. If Red Bull say this, if Mercedes and Ferrari say this, we're a bit, I don't know. But now Haas is saying it, I think we're kind of a bit, I don't want 9 teams on the grid and 18 drivers. That's just, I don't know, it's a bit worrying time. Potentially having an extra team in 2021, which is brilliant, that could happen. But then also, if that doesn't happen and we lose a team, it's also quite tragic. And none of us want this to happen. So Lyle, what's your thoughts when you first seen that Gene Haas is potentially going to be pulling out of Formula One altogether? Are you worried by this statement? Or are you a bit like, I'm taking this with a big pinch of salt by this. What do you think?
Well, I mean, of course, 2019 wasn't great for Haas. I wouldn't really say that they've had a bumpy road in Formula One. Obviously, 2016 was good. It was a best start, I would say, to any Formula One team. I mean, it was really the first Formula One team we saw kind of enter really in a long time. Obviously, going back till, of course, Renault, the comeback of Renault, really since Red Bull. Haas had a great start. And of course, not linked to any kind of engine manufacturer or anything like that. They were a proper kind of new team. So good start from them. 2 good drives as well. Of course, obviously forgetting Gutierrez in 16, K-Mag and Grosjean pushing on 17, 18, and 19. But yes, they have Gunter Steiner, who of course is portrayed from Netflix as kind of a very hard man. But I wouldn't say it was terrible for Haas. But last year was a bad car. 2 good drivers who as you said, Jordan, they probably could have been caught by Williams. And the reason that they didn't was because, of course, they've got Romain and Kevin, who are, stronger than that Haas. I mean, the reason why I think those two were, even more annoyed is because they know that they're better than that. And a lot of people behind the scenes are better than that. Gunter is better than that. And, Gene Haas does deserve better than that. And I would say it fell apart kind of midway through 2019. I wouldn't say towards the start. Australia was kind of one of those races where, they had to get through it. Australia and Haas don't really mix, but then obviously they had a good reason in 2016. So they got through that, and they got through some races of the season where it was a bit hit and miss. And Baku was a terrible race for them and things like that. But then, of course, as Rich Energy dropped out, that's when really everything started to fall apart for Haas. Of course, some of the relationship in the team wasn't great. And then that's where it all started to go. There was talks about, is Roman going to be signed for next year? Gunnar Steiner said in Netflix that he didn't want either of them coming back, but of course, obviously, they were retained for this year. So it's kind of a bit of like confusion where Haas were going to be, but yeah, not a good season from them. Roman Abu Dhabi just said, his last interview was just, I want 2019 to be over with, and K-Mag never said anything like that because he did better than Grosjean, but you can imagine that they would just both want to move on. They both deserve better cars than that, and to be honest, Haas, as the drivers go, they deserve better than that, and I'm very surprised, Jordan, that those two have stayed at the team. Of course, there's no other seat that would take them, but I'm surprised that they stayed. For Grosjean, kind of a little bit of both. He does deserve better, but then, of course, obviously, there was about halfway through the season where, Ocon was available. Of course, now Ocon was signed by Renault. Hulkenberg was available. Of course, there was talk about Hulkenberg taking that seat, and Grosjean stayed. But mainly, Magnussen, for me, was the driver to... I'm surprised he stayed because of why would he be happy with the car? And I think he's got less of a fuse than Roman to sit there and go, this car's, it'll get better. Kevin just needs a car straight away, and of course he wasn't getting that. So I'm a little bit surprised at the news. They're not giving it a few years. I think to have a bad car last year, the only year that hasn't been that bad, to say that is kind of like not true. Really, I think they wouldn't leave after 1 year. I could imagine it if they'd been in for like 4 or 5 years and it's been bad, but really only last year was bad because 16 was great, 17 was good, 18 was pretty good, and of course 19 not very good. If they were in for a few years, and they could say that, if they get to 2023 and then the car's bad, they can say that, but not after 1 year. But it's just been it hasn't been great for them. It really, really hasn't. So Jordan, of course, Rich Energy, of course, only a sponsor. But one of their biggest sponsors to have, of course, like they were, Red Bull, an energy drink like Red Bull were, it was looking promising for the team. When they dropped out, do you believe that that's when Haas started to decline? Because in my mind, I was like, when Rich Energy left, that's when I think Haas started to leave, things started to implode, and of course trying to stay away from that Drive to Survive for a little bit because, of course, that wasn't out when we were watching the season. I feel like that can sway you a little bit, and of course that's not 100% Formula 1, a lot of that's TV. So kind of to say that, they were probably that annoyed I don't think that's probably that true. But they weren't happy, especially Grosjean, because he was, finishing at the back and behind, obviously in front of the Williams, but at the back, kind of the worst of the kind of the front run, the worst of the 2019 runners, because obviously Williams probably had like a 2010 car. So yes, it wasn't great from them, and as soon as Rich Energy left, which was around the Silverstone mark, that's when Haas started to decline. So Jordan, when would you say that a Haas decline started to happen, and would you say it was because of Rich Energy? And of course, overall, would you agree that it was only one season that they've started to have bad, and they should say this after a few seasons, that of course, if it's not going their way, like Renault could possibly, that to evaluate this after 1 year just isn't right?
Well, first of all, on the Rich Energy thing, I think Rich Energy had no impact on the transition of Haas. I think for me, it all started about the Chinese Grand Prix, which was the third race of the season last year. And like I said, Australia was pretty good. The car looked really, really good. Bahrain in qualifying, I think, was all right. I can't remember how it was race pace. I think it was decent anyway. Then about China, it just declined. And to the point of where, Grosjean was begging, even before Rich Energy pulled out, he was begging the team to go back to the old spec car, which in itself, that's an embarrassment, because you should be getting these new parts on the car, seeing what's wrong with the car. Okay, we could improve it here, getting some new parts in, there you go, Grosjean, there you go, K-Mag, you have some new parts and off you go, and hopefully the car will be better. It wasn't, so therefore Grosjean was saying to go back to the old spec, and K-Mag was like, well, I want the new spec, but alright, okay, it's a team game, we'll go for it. So I think for me, Rich Energy has absolutely no impact whatsoever. It just made the season a bit more damper because of what had happened at Silverstone, like you said, how they pulled out and how it was just a weird sponsorship. Very weird sponsorship. Anyways, but what you were saying there about the whole driver situation, I think K-Mag would have been of course, impatient and annoyed. You could clearly see that, not just because of Drive to Survive, but you could see in interviews and behind the scenes, and obviously Grosjean. And to be fair, you don't need a genius or an F1 genius to tell you that they were annoyed. You could see it by the results. Look at 16, 17, and 18, especially 2018. What a season it was back then. Solid year. And of course, Haas were doing excellent up to this point. It was, exceeding expectations, in my opinion. If I had to evaluate their performance from 16 to 19, above expectations, it was incredible what they were doing. And they did it in a totally different way to what anyone else had done it. Came in, got the Ferrari engine, got the Ferrari parts, kind of went to like the, like a bargain kind of base, like a Ferrari bargain base shop, let's say, got all the parts in, put it on the car. They did it very, very cheaply. Because, like I said, Gene Haas, he's not poor in any way, but in terms of coming into Formula One, it'll, especially in the modern day, it'll financially impact anybody. So, and that's why a lot of manufacturers and teams are like kind of maybe avoiding F1 for now. And Haas came in at a risk, definitely at a risk, did it differently, and it has paid off. But like for me, K-Mag would have stayed at Haas anyway because there was no other options for him to go. It's either like, you've worked hard to stay in Formula One. And K-Mag is a fighter. Let's not forget that. He is a fighter. He is aggressive. He's very old school, that kind of thing. He's very vocal on the team radio, like we said. But he is a team player. And of course, he would happily, he would definitely want to help the team develop. But from what I was hearing, that the team weren't listening to the drivers at all. They just kind of did their own direction of things. And like you're saying, it didn't work. So I think for me, K-Mag was safe there anyway. And of course, Grosjean was the one that potentially could have left because, like, to be fair, he wasn't doing that. He had his moments where he was doing a solid job, but then he would have his moments where, oh, here we go, here's Grosjean again. So, yeah, I'm surprised, like everyone else, Grosjean stayed. But like a few people have said, that it's better to keep these two drivers together because, well, you don't have to have the stress of having a brand new driver to get comfy into the team in the last year of regulation. So you may as well just keep them the same together. Just get over the finishing line of 2020. Then look at 2021, bring in a new driver. Then everyone's on the same level, same playing field of these brand new cars. So I think maybe that's how they were doing it. But Grosjean, like I said, those two easily would have stayed there, no problem. But I mean, Haas's record in Formula 1 in terms of their constructors is 2016 they finished 8th on 29 points, 17 8th again on 47 points. In 2018 they finished 5th on 93 points, just below Renault. Though that battle in 2018 was absolutely amazing. That a team like Renault, who have got a very good history in Formula 1, were being challenged by the new boys and beaten the likes of Williams and, of course, McLaren in 2018. They were beating some really big names. And, of course, Toro Rosso and Alfa Romeo Sauber in 2018, I think. So, beating some well-established teams, which was awesome. And I think a lot of people were like, go on, Haas. I mean, kind of, me, yes, but me, no, because I was like, McLaren, back at the back, sad face. But they were dark days. Anyway, and then it was like, look, go on, Haas, like. And then 2019, we were like, here we go. Like, Haas surely can challenge for 4th place. That's the best they could do. They weren't going to challenge for 3rd. Surely not. So, and then just how they demise would have certainly... I mean, Gene Haas would have went like, what's happened? What the hell's going on here, guys? Like, we were doing so well with progress. Then this year, we just slapped back in the middle, which would have lost them a lot of money. Because let's remember, those 2 8th places would have generated some money for Haas. 5th place would have even more millions of dollars into the team. So of course, therefore, Haas would have invested that money into it, sponsorships, and of course his money as well. And then to drop off 3 or 4 positions would have losing all that millions. It's critical, like I said, to a team like Haas. So if Haas have another poor season again, it's like, well, financially, it's not stable to be in Formula 1. And of course, I can understand where he's coming from, but from a fan's point of view, we shouldn't, we don't want to lose Haas. We really, really don't want to lose them whatsoever. So really, I'm like a McLaren fan, 4th place. But Haas, please have a good season, because I don't want you to drop. And I don't think it's because of, like I said, Lyle, it's not because of a one-season thing. It's a long-term thing, because I think Haas came at the sport with a 5-year plan, and it's paid off well. So, in what Gene said in his statement, looking forward in the next 5 years, like if they're going to be at the back, what's the point? And of course, from what we're seeing in 2019, that's we know that Haas can be there potentially, which is going to be awful. So therefore, if it's bad this year, we're going to be behind on money and development and stuff. Then in 21, like you said, it gets expensive, and they don't have the cash. Well, they might have some cash, but not enough to produce a really good car for 21. Then what's the point in carrying on, losing all that money? It's like, what's the point? So of course he may potentially pull potentially pull away, but like I said, I don't want to see Haas to go as well. So obviously Lyle, like what you saying there before about, of course, the whole driver thing as well. Do you think that like maybe K-Mag and Grosjean will put on a bit of a brave face, even though, like, let's say they know that potentially that this team could be dropped out, therefore they're going to be losing their seats. So do you think that could affect them psychologically, that we need to ship up sharpish because we could be out of a seat for next year potentially if this team does drop away? Grosjean, I don't know, but K-Mag, more than likely, I think he might stay with Haas for another year. But of course, they need to perform well. So maybe, do you think that it could affect them psychologically, or do you think that they will actually step up to the plate and become race better, race harder, don't crash into each other like we've seen a few times in 19? So do you think that Haas have got two drivers that are capable of, let's say, keeping them in Formula One?
I think the pressure last year was getting to them because a lot of times they were kind of putting more pressure on themselves to perform better and things like that. And when something goes wrong, it's kind of like, they were kind of scared of the team, really, and they were scared of the progress. They're not like a Renault or someone like that to kind of fall back on. And I don't want to kind of badmouth Nico Hülkenberg, but like if they were in Nico's shoes, for example, or Nico was at Haas, he wouldn't have lasted the distance. Because again, Renault was one of those teams where they could afford to have Hülkenberg on board because it was a manufacturer. It's they actually produce the Renault engines. They have money to be in Formula One. Of course, they're looking at other places like Daniel Ricciardo, for example, his teammate last year. If Hülkenberg was at Haas, he wouldn't have stayed that long. It's short for them, and of course, they wouldn't want new drivers. So I think if Haas were going to stay in Formula One for 2021, they would retain Grosjean and Magnussen. I can't see those going, especially Magnussen, of course. But even Grosjean, like, I can't think of anyone else who would take that seat. The main thing is Haas are a Ferrari engine, a Ferrari partnership, and there's no other team on the grid that use Ferrari engines, of course, apart from Ferrari. So that's the main thing that's keeping them alive. And of course, Alfa Romeo. But that's the main thing is with Haas, the second best team, they're better than Alfa Romeo, or they're supposed to be better than Alfa Romeo. So is that another space that a Formula 2 driver could come into? Is that also a team for a Ferrari Junior program? So if Ferrari wanted to, of course, promote like Mick Schumacher, for example, in their Ferrari program, instead of putting them in a Ferrari straight away, where are they going to look to? Are they going to look at Alfa Romeo? Well, of course, at the moment they've got Antonio Giovinazzi, and Kimi's like, it's unsure what he's going to do. Possibly not another season, but you never know. I mean, like you said in Netflix, he's just here for the ride, and he is a good driver. He does perform well. He does perform consistently. To me, he doesn't look like someone who's going to leave, and I don't think Kimi's going to leave at the end of the season, anyways. But if they were going to promote Mick Schumacher, there's one less seat that he needs to go into. Is that another Ferrari Junior team that they're keeping open? I mean, like, Mercedes, for example, they have, of course, Racing Point, someone that Esteban's driven for before. Now he's in Renault, which is kind of a transitional, maybe a loan thing. But the main thing when he was in the Racing Point, or the Force India as it was called then, is it's a Mercedes car. He was part of the Mercedes program. And of course, George Russell, exactly the same. He's at Williams. The reason why is because that's a Mercedes car. And of course, that's in the Mercedes program. Ferrari, on the other hand, have Alfa Romeo. But is Haas another option for them to have? Like Mercedes have two cars, have two teams. Ferrari have never really said that Haas are a junior team, but maybe that would be one of the things to rescue them, Jordan. So if they were ever to say, like, okay, we're in difficulty, of course the money is not really an issue, but of course Gene Haas is one man, he's one entrepreneur, he has a business behind it, but of course it's not like a Mercedes, for example. The money isn't there just for Formula One. So if they say, okay, we're in trouble, we need money in Formula One, we need parts, we need help, and of course we have two drivers, with nothing to do, would Ferrari then kind of, push into the team and say, I tell you what, you're a Ferrari car, we'll give you more Ferrari input, make you two guys Ferrari drivers, or obviously, as I say, promote Mick Schumacher or someone like that to one of the seats, maybe replacing Grosjean or someone like that, and just make it a new Ferrari team. Maybe that's the saviour for Haas, because at the moment that's where it looks to be. They're using a Ferrari engine, they are kind of a Ferrari board to go to. K-Mag had a massive support to go to Ferrari in the early days, and even Grosjean did as well, but obviously that might just be the talk. But that's one of those things, I think, Ferrari engine, they could be a Ferrari team. And, if there is any team on the grid that could, help them, of course, it is Ferrari. And, of course, it hasn't happened before. I mean, Williams last year, early towards last year, the end of 2018, heading into early last year, they were in difficulty. Who helped them out? But Mercedes will give you more money, will give you more parts, but, of course, George Russell, Mercedes driver, the money that he was bringing was from Mercedes. It wasn't his own money, and of course that's why we never talk about, like Nicholas Latifi and Lance Stroll. We never put them in the same bucket, because George Russell brought mainly Mercedes money. It became Williams Mercedes, and if anything, it's kind of like Mercedes' junior project, Formula 2 project. It could be a Formula 2 team of how well they're doing. So could Haas be the Ferrari junior team, and of course keep those two in, because as you said, Jordan, I don't know where they would go if Haas were to leave Formula 1. It's kind of a tricky one, and the answer is nowhere. I mean, obviously Kimi might leave, but you can't just... That's the thing with Formula 1, you can't just spend all the time waiting for a driver to leave. I feel like you've got to go somewhere, there and do what you want to do. Apart from that, the only options I can think is just to be a support driver. I mean, maybe Grosjean can go back to Renault and support those drivers. Obviously, Danny Rick and Esteban Ocon. Maybe Kevin can go to, God knows, McLaren maybe. I mean, maybe he could have another go at McLaren. That wasn't too bad. Obviously, maybe he could support, Lando and Carlos. And of course, Carlos, big future. He could go to Ferrari or someone, so maybe he could kind of sit behind him. But yeah, that's the main thing. Where are those two drivers going to go to? But overall, I think it's just, I'd like Haas to stay in. They're established. They've been in for, 5 years now. And yeah, I'd like to see them established. They're a US team, which of course keeps them in the fight. So yeah, I would like them to stay. Obviously, the two drivers, it does kind of, worry you about where they're going to go. But yeah, maybe Ferrari can come and save them. So Jordan, I mean, is that an option for Ferrari to save them? Of course, after using the Ferrari engine, are they kind of a Ferrari junior team? Could they be? Because I mean, they're only 5 years old and they're not really that established yet. Could Ferrari kind of grab them and say, you're going to be a Ferrari team for the future? Because of course we have talked about, possibly Mick Schumacher being promoted there, of course, obviously from Prima to Haas, a year there, and then go to Ferrari. And especially if Alfa Romeo is taken by another seat, of course, when Kimi leaves, someone else, Giovinazzi's probably safe. So could that be another Ferrari team? Of course, obviously Mercedes having two. Could Haas be a Ferrari junior team? And is that really the only option for them to possibly stay in Formula 1? And obviously in that way, do they need help in that sort? Of course, Ferrari can't build them an amazing car, but have Ferrari on board will mean, obviously you get the internal combustion engine, but you get all the other parts as well, and the security of being with a Ferrari team.
I wouldn't say Haas are a junior team to Ferrari, because of course they've got two drivers there who aren't associated with Ferrari. I think Haas to Ferrari is like what Williams are to Mercedes. Of course, Williams haven't got really any... I think they've got... They've got the engine, I think they've got the suspension and the gearbox from Mercedes, but of course they haven't got the actual parts, like the bodywork from Mercedes, unlike Haas, who have got parts from Ferrari, but they haven't got the drivers. But of course Williams have got George Russell, who is part of the Mercedes program. So I think Williams aren't exactly Williams aren't like a B team to Mercedes, and it's the same way that Haas aren't really, I wouldn't say, B team to Ferrari. I think Alfa Romeo are more cosy to Ferrari in that sense. Of course, both Italian. I think Alfa Romeo, do they have Ferrari engines in their car or not? I don't know. I don't know.
Yes, they do.
They do. Anyways, so I think to be honest, I think Haas potentially could go down that route of they are kind of linked into Ferrari, but Ferrari haven't put any drivers in their cars yet. Of course, Alfa Romeo might have that say. More than likely, Kimi will be leaving Formula 1 this season. Of course, the 40-year-old, he is getting on now. And to be fair, I think for me, Kimi, he's had his time. I think is he overdone it? All right, he is a popular character, but let's think about this. Could that seat be filled by someone better? I say better, but someone different, younger? Then yes. I think obviously the likes of Schwartzman, Schumacher, Armstrong. There's a whole bunch of talent come through that Ferrari Junior Academy, and if one of them is ready, which I don't know who, but one of them could potentially be ready to make a move into Formula One to replace Raikkonen alongside maybe Giovinazzi, then yeah, I think that's the ideal position. But let's say Kimi does stay alongside Giovinazzi for 21, then I think more than likely Haas will replace their drivers. And as like I said, it's better to have a new driver in for 21 than it is for 2020, because fitting in and getting used to the car and all that, everyone's on the same kind of playing field, like I said earlier. So I think Haas wow, Haas F1 team. Haas should, I can't get words on it. Haas should definitely go down that route of getting in one of their drivers alongside, more than likely, Kevin Magnussen. Again, no more digs at Grosjean, like I say. Who that driver should be, again, I really don't know. But looking ahead for the 2020 season, as we are only at time of release, it will be 8 days away from the Grand Prix. So only not that long to go before we actually get back on the track. And of course, if you look at testing, Haas did the least number of laps out of all the teams in the 6 days. I think they did just shy of 400 laps, which isn't not ideal. And they lost a lot of running when K-Mag binned it. I think it was day 2 or day 3, which lost a lot of time. I think he lost all day on the afternoon. And then Grosjean crashed a couple of times, spun the car a couple of times into the gravel, which wasn't ideal. So Haas have lost a lot of running in testing. So they aren't best prepared for 2020 neither, which again is going to help Gene Haas's mood. If Haas had a promising testing, they got the most laps in, they had some decent pace in that car, then potentially Gene could be, I'm optimistic. But after last season's doom and gloom, and after this season's preseason testing, it's not looking good for Haas for 2020. Anything could change in Australia, of course. It's only testing. Don't read into it. But the thing that I do read into is lap time. They got the least time. They've got the least kind of data from their car on track with the tyres, with the engine, qualifying mode, race mode, practice mode, or whatever. It's not the best preparation to go into Australia, which we've seen that recently with Williams, who have done the least laps. They haven't got into the season strongly, and look at how that panned out. So it's not looking good for Haas at all. And if they do have a really poor start, then of course, we should be worried in that threat. But I don't know if they will have a kind of a proper pure link to Ferrari in that sense. I really don't know, because of their American heritage and stuff like that. I don't know. If they do put one of the youngsters in their car, then potentially Haas could be in there for the long haul. But again, I really, really don't know, because I wouldn't expect Haas to put in a driver that is really young, for them to go, right, okay, after this season we're pulling out. It's totally waste that driver's time. If they say, right, okay, we're staying for 21, but we're bringing in Nico Hulkenberg and keeping K-Mag, I would be like, right, that hasn't helped my confidence anymore, because both kind of coming they're not young, but they're not oldish, if you know what I mean. So they're kind of in their past peak kind of age. Maybe not K-Mag, but Hulkenberg definitely kind of past their peak kind of age. But if they do that, then I would be certainly more it's futuristic. I really don't know. But Lyle, do you think that Haas should put not one but two young drivers in their car? Maybe not a Ferrari driver, but maybe someone else from Formula 2. I mean, of course, having the Ferrari driver in there would help. Ferrari engine, Ferrari parts, of course, and all that. But do you think that Haas should, if Haas do put a driver in there, if you're Gene Haas, right, do you put in a younger driver in that seat for 2021, or do you put in someone with experience, again, that might help the team progress on in the future, because they'll understand the car and maybe development and a regulation change better than a young driver? What would you do in that situation?
I wouldn't put a young driver there. I'd put an old driver there. I'd keep your two drivers. I mean, they've tested the 2018 car and the 2019 car in that same year. Obviously, as you said, about a third way through the season, they switched the regulations. I think it was Grosjean was using the old spec car, and then K-Mag was using the young spec car, and then obviously Silverstone, they changed from the new part to the old part. It was very much kind of fiddle year, and if they can't get these two drivers who have been in Formula 1 for a very long time, Grosjean's been over a decade, K-Max, is approaching that as well, driven for McLaren as well, obviously Grosjean driven for Renault, they've both got experience. If Haas cannot get them to where they want to be, then they have no chance with a younger guy. A younger driver needs to go somewhere where the car is, decent. I mean, the only exception with that is, of course, Williams. Of course, George Russell driving the Williams car. George is actually kind of on another level because no one really cares about how that car gets on. The only main thing for George is, help Williams, of course, but mainly get experience in that car and kind of wait it out, and wait to be in that Mercedes, because of course how much George Russell wants to be in that Mercedes, and of course beat your teammate like you did last year. I think it was 21-0 in qualifying. He beat Kubica. He'd won. In terms of being last, I don't think anybody cared. I didn't care. I don't. That's the thing. I'm not watching him anyways. So of course George is probably on another level. But all 18 other drivers have to be like the best that they can, and they have a good, McLaren have a good car. They put Lando in, of course, give Lando a good chance. He has done well in that car. Ferrari have had obviously an amazing car. They put a young guy, Charles Leclerc, in. Red Bull had a good car. They put Max Verstappen in. But if they were in bad positions, if they put a young Verstappen in a Haas, he wouldn't do very well. If they put a young Leclerc in a young Haas, he wouldn't do very well. They might do a little bit better, of course, than the two drivers because, everyone says that they are stronger drivers, and it might be the case, but in this case, it's not, because Grosjean and Magnussen are driving cars I would say technically aren't really finished. The work in progress, the missing things, the missing links. It's kind of like when we try to put all these videos together. It's like trying to make the F1 debate show for Saturdays without Jordan's audio. Like, you can't do that. We couldn't do that. And it's like driving a car with no wheels. In the sense of it's just internally. There's things missing on the Haas, the things that they don't have, there's things that need improving, and they're not going to get that with a new driver. So that's why they're retaining the drivers, and that's why they retained them for this year. Because when you took a step back and you thought, after all that Gunter Steiner had said, obviously in Drive to Survive, but we're not going to mention that. After all that, Grosjean had a bad season. After all that, K-Mag didn't have a great season. After all the kicking off, and after all of the just Haas hadn't had a good year. You thought, why did they re-sign the two drivers? The reason that they did that was because they would be the only people to know how the Haas works. Especially Grosjean, who's been there since 2016. He knows how the team works. If you bring in a new guy, I know I've just said in my previous statement, bring in someone like Mick Schumacher, but that's only because it's a Ferrari junior team and maybe Ferrari can help. But if Ferrari aren't going to help, and if there's no hope for Haas, and Haas are going to have the same cars they did in 2020, obviously, as we've said, regulation change, but there's no engine regs, there's just, minor other changes, bodywork, things like that. So there's no guarantee that Haas are going to nail it. That, they should be working more on the internal designs, a bit like how Braun did now, but there's no reason that Haas, I think, would change. And if they end up with a 2021 season like the 2019 season, or let's say a 2020 season like the 2019 season, there's no way a junior driver or a younger driver could do better than K-Mag and Grosjean right now. I think it's kind of stuck, Jordan, and I think that's where we are at the moment. We're kind of stuck. We can't get out of this. I don't have a fix for this problem. I don't think they should leave, but I think we're having this conversation a little bit too soon, don't you think? I feel like Haas need to be in Formula 1 for at least another 2 years, another 3 years, wait for the regulation change next year, which of course, that's what a lot of teams are excited about, basically talk to any of the midfield teams, including McLaren and people like that, even like Red Bull, they're looking forward to next year, and it's kind of a race to see who nails next year's regulations. Very much like Braun, a team that, went and, in the 2008 season when they were obviously originally rebranded as Honda, they weren't that strong at all. So it's kind of like, how do we best do the regulations for next year? But Haas, it's too soon to be having this conversation. And yeah, I feel like they're not going to drop out. I feel like the best thing they can do is just plough along. They have two strong drivers in Grosjean and Magnussen. There's no reason to change them. It's just try and hope for a better season. And the way that they can do that is just, head down and just try and have a good Australia, hit the ground running. As Jordan said, of course, winter testing, not great for them. Not many laps, not great timings. But that's the thing, though, you can't take much from testing. Last year, look at what happened last year. We took the fact that Ferrari were very fast, Mercedes weren't, and then look what happened. So you can't take much from testing. So Haas might be playing the long game. I don't think they're playing the bluff, but we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, so Jordan, that's my final thoughts, of course, on the HAAS, what's happening with HAAS. I don't think they're going to pull out, but at the moment, I don't think they're going to pull out. But I feel like we're having this conversation way too soon. I feel like they need to be in Formula One for at least this season, see how it goes. If they're in, plan for next season. See, hopefully, it looks strong for next season. See how the regulation changes go, and keep your two drivers. If they look at someone else, then it's not going to go well for them. Those two drivers as well are not done. They're as hungry as you can be, and I feel like if they have the car to give HAAS some good results, they will give HAAS some good results. They have been on the podium before. They've had good finishes. Grosjean, has had some great season with MK-Mag. Really good consistent finishes over the years. So yeah, I think they need to stay in Formula One at the moment, retain the drivers, but mainly plan. Hopefully have a good year this year, but look at the future. Look at 21. If they're being serious in what we've seen in testing, and 2020 is not going to be a good season for HAAS, just not scrap it, but say, fair enough, we're gonna work on 2020, but behind the scenes we're gonna start planning 21 now, and then hopefully by winter testing in 2021, they'll have designed a good car. The future is not out for HAAS. They're an American team. They have some massive buzz behind them. They have some great people behind the scenes. Of course, Gene Haas. Gunter Steiner. He's a very hard guy to talk about. Is he the best person to lead them forward? Obviously, you've got some people that have followed them over. I think Grosjean's race engineer, I don't know what he's called, but he followed them over from the Lotus days. K-Man brought a few people over from McLaren as well. So they've got a great heritage, at least what they're building anyways. They've got a good relationship with Ferrari, and let's see how they go on. But Jordan, I hope they'll stay in Formula One. And as I say, this conversation is way too soon to be having. So, your final thoughts on HAAS? What do you think? Obviously, team since 2016, two good drivers. What do you think? Do you think they should stay in Formula One? Do you think they should retain the drivers? Do you think they should wait for the 2021 regulations? What do you think on HAAS?
I think they should definitely give 21 a go and the new regulations a go. In terms of drivers, for me, K-Mag keep him, but Grosjean for me is the same way what I said Kimi was at Alfa Romeo. To be fair, I think they should drop Grosjean because let's face it, he's not the best driver. There is certainly better in the ranks. Get someone new in there, have K-Mag leader of the team, and have this guy push K-Mag a bit. And I think that could get quite spicy within the team. Teammates pushing each other. Because let's face it, Grosjean isn't pushing K-Mag whatsoever. Grosjean is a bit like, Grosjean's Grosjean. Like I said, he has his days where he's a really good driver and he's on point. But some days you just make some silly mistakes where you're like, but don't get me wrong, K-Mag has as well. K-Mag has made some errors and stuff like that, and of course. But at the end of the day, K-Mag has always finished ahead of Grosjean. So certainly for me going forward, I think Grosjean, if HAAS do stay there, I'll be very, very, very surprised if Grosjean is there. For me, I think they should get rid of him. Bring in someone with youth, with, of course, hopefully with a long career ahead of them. Maybe that. It depends who. I think Giovinazzi will stay at Alfa Romeo, but I think Kimi will leave. And if Schwartzman gets that seat at Alfa, then I think Schumacher might go to HAAS. And if Schumacher gets a seat at Alfa, then Schwartzman might go to HAAS, or Armstrong might go, or whoever.
You know who I think might go to HAAS, Jordan? You know who I think might go to HAAS? Because again, I don't agree with you in terms of young drivers. I feel like they need older drivers, and I don't really look at driver comebacks. But Nico Hülkenberg, he was rumoured to have that seat around the summer break, so they might possibly look at Nico for next year. For 2021.
I think people need to forget about Nico Hülkenberg. He is done. He is done.
He is an old guy who knows the car, and I feel like I'm not a big fan of Nico Hülkenberg, of course, and I don't think he should have stayed in Formula 1 for as long as he did, but maybe he could do Robert Kubica. Maybe he could come to the team, bring some money, bring some advice, because obviously remember Robert did as well. He didn't just bring money, he brought he brought how to drive 10 years ago. That's what he brought. So,
but if they bring him here next season, why didn't they bring him in this season?
Because they wanted to keep going. I don't know. But I'm just saying though, I don't think maybe a Formula 2 driver at the moment is good enough for HAAS. I feel like they need to work out their problems first, get strong, get a better car, better chassis, better things behind the scenes. Maybe develop a partnership stronger with Ferrari, and then you can get Formula 2 drivers in. Because, of course, I'm behind. I think if they could form a Ferrari Junior program, I think that would be great. And, of course, then look at Schwartzman and Schumacher. But for now, I think, they can only do better with the older drivers who do know what they're talking about in Formula 1, of course, which is Grosjean and K-Mag. And that's why they were re-signed for this year.
Yeah, I think I think they will be assessing maybe Formula 2 because let's face, if none of the F1 if none of the F2 drivers are ready, then they might not promote any of them whatsoever. Like they could have an absolutely shocker of a season. We're only speaking in hindsight at the moment. So maybe they'll retain both the drivers again for another season, whilst they wait for someone else to be ready. I just think that for me, Grosjean is again like Hulkenberg. He's had his time in Formula 1. It's time to move on. And I think with Hulkenberg, like he's been in Formula 1 long enough. He's done. Like a bit like Alonso. Forget about him. He's had his time in Formula 1. He's had his moment. Let him go.
He's cooked. He's turned.
Forget about him.
Get him out there.
He's done. He's had his time. He's had his time in Formula 1. Like thanks for coming, Hulkenberg. Nice seeing you, mate. All the best for the future. But
it was a good effort.
I'll be surprised if he does come back to Haas. And like I said, if they get him for next year, why not this year? What's going on there? Again, very strange. Of course, like I said earlier, I think the main reason why they kept Grosjean and K-Mag was to keep that team chemistry together for this last year of the regulations. Let's see what happens for this year and of course for next year. All interesting times for the Haas, but of course it could all be paper talk, it could all be trash, and we could have just completely wasted about 50 minutes of our time. But hey, it's all worth a good debate. Of course, nothing is officially true or anything like that. I mean, of course, what Haas is saying, I would certainly be wary of it, definitely. But of course, who knows? He might just be, bluffing or anything like that. But I really doubt it. I think he generally does mean what he is saying. But anyways, let us know what you think in the comment section below about the Haas situation. What should they do? Do you think that if you were in Haas's position right now, would you actually generally pull out of the sport? Would you give 21 a go? I really think that they should stick around for a couple of years at least to see out these regulations, because they could do well. They might boost them up. We've seen teams in the midfield move to the front before with regulation changes, and Haas could be that team. And I think it'll be very interesting. So I think they should definitely give it a go in 21 and see where the future takes them. But of course, like I said, let us know your opinions in the comment section below. But we've only got one more week to wait before Formula 1 begins, and we've got a very, very good week coming up for you guys. We've got previews, we've got reviews, and of course on Monday we have got a very special video coming out where we're going to be explaining what's happening during a race weekend with our content as well. So can't wait for that to be released. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later.
See you later, guys.